Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
And it's 10 minutes past 9. We're in conversation with Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu, who's just released his first book. It's called Beyond Democracy, Igniting the South African Renaissance. And the book really outlining the mental slavery, or what Ntsikelelo calls the mental slavery. And he says that that's responsible for all the social ills that our country is facing at the moment. I'll take your calls on 0891 104 207, 0891 104 207, SMSs as well to 34701. Ntsikelelo joins us in the studio this morning. He's an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, a poet, a hip-hop artist, a basketball player, and a thought coach. That is a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
How are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm good. So tell us a bit about yourself, maybe. Let's start there before we go into some of the points in the book.
Okay, I'm originally from the East Rand, a township called Watem. I grew up there, I was raised there, and I studied there. I went to school to Pulong, and after that I went to Wits to do a BA degree in International Relations and Politics, and pretty much I've done a lot of things, with my imagination. So as a result, that's why you find that lengthy portfolio there.
And the book is, a lot about imagination, a lot about going into your thinking and your thought processes to get you out of the things that trap you. But tell us a bit about the book, how it all came about.
Well, the book is actually a spiritual journey that started, I think, 9 years ago, and self-actualization, when I was actually introduced to philosophy by a lecturer named Windsor. He's now a lecturer at Wits. And he introduced me to philosophy and alternative ways of thinking, and I started researching and going deep into it, and the workings of the mind, and how thoughts create things, and how ideas shape our reality, and how to use that for our benefit. So I think about 3 years ago, I decided, wait a minute, here's South Africa. We just come out of an apartheid era. We are in a democracy, but now we need to change the residual effects of the apartheid era, because you see, it's like you can take the person out of the slavery, as I say, but you can't really take the slavery out of the person. So I thought, maybe how about then I actually show that you can take the slavery also out and help people create new ways of thinking.
So we are, as you say, free, as in we live in a democracy today, but our minds and our thoughts and how we feel about ourselves and the other is still trapped in the past?
Yes, it very much is still trapped, because if you look at how the idea of apartheid was set up, it was set up in a way that it creates small minds, it creates small thinking, it doesn't promote belief. That's why the first thing that they did was to create townships. And townships, if you look at the land and how it's distributed, it's actually small spaces. You have a house in a 150 square meter area, already, and you've got 10, 12 people staying in that house. It's restricting. So your mind doesn't work beyond those boundaries, because those are boundaries that they created to actually bring out the result. And then they topped it off with Abantu education to say, we will not teach you more than what you need to know to do a certain job, so that your mind also is still restricted to doing that. So it was like it was creating machines that could be controlled just by limiting the mind. So you can let the body go, but as long as you have the mind, then the person is stuck. So and that was the true genius of apartheid. It was more of a mind game than something that was physical. And now it's actually time to say, look, we are in a democracy. That's a new idea. It's a new idea that promotes equal opportunities, individualism, creativity. You can be whatever you want to be, but somehow people are still stuck in being told what to do. You're still waiting for an instruction from someone. Someone has to tell you, do this or do that. There's no creativity, there's no initiative. And that's just the mindset. And those things can be changed, and people can get out of those mindsets.
Who should read Beyond Democracy?
I think every South African. I really think every South African, because you find people that know about this, but that do not share the information and the knowledge. And then you find people that don't know about it, And basically, if they don't hear it from people like me or people that are pushing a progressive society or, the reimagination of the South African country, which is part of an international process, the whole world is reimagining itself constantly and is responsible for the change. If we don't do that, if we don't say, let's do this, then it's not going to happen. So it's for every South African to say, look, it is also my responsibility. We are in a new idea. We are in a democracy. Holding on to old ideas is actually self-defeating.
It's 15 minutes past 9. We'll take your calls on 0891 104 207, 0891 104 207, SMSs to 34701. You're listening to SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader, talking about the book Beyond Democracy, Igniting the South African Renaissance, in conversation with Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu. What is the South African Renaissance?
The South African, interesting. I mean, let's look at the word Renaissance. Yeah. It's actually a detachment from old ways of thinking, dogma, rules, anything that was set as cast on stone. So it's a detachment. If you look at back in the the rebirth, the Renaissance as we know it, where the Leonardo da Vinci's came out, it was them saying, wait a minute, this thing is really limiting. Let us explore other ideas. Let us walk away from the church, because that was the ruling era, of the church. And let's walk away from that and let's find new ways. And that's how science came about, and that's how art became as art as we know. Music evolved, it developed. People started becoming individuals instead of machinery. And now we need to get into a sense where the South African mind now enters a renaissance to say, now it's a rebirth. The problem is no longer out there. The problem is within, with self-belief.
It was a cultural movement, the original Renaissance. Do you think South Africa today is ready for that sort of revolution?
Yes, definitely. And we can see this even in the younger generations. The younger generations are moving fast away from old ways of thinking. I mean, you can look at the hip hop culture that is sprung up and how it has taken. I mean, we might say, look, it's South Africa. These kids are lost. No, they're part of a collective consciousness of the universe to say, we are actually now feeding off other countries. The World Cup was magnificent, because we got to engage and feed off other people and get their ideas and what they wanted. So yes, we are ready for a renaissance. But like I say, even in the book, the real renaissance starts from within.
I'm going to take some calls in a moment, but I want to talk about how you start the book, and you started with the story of the Exodus. Maybe just draw the parallel for me, what you were trying to say by starting with, the Israelites being in the desert with Moses.
Yes, that's a very interesting story. I love the story. The reason why I use the story is because when you look at the story of the Israelites coming out of Egypt, you had a situation whereby you had Moses leading the people out of Egypt, and then when he gets to the wilderness, now he needs to get these people ready to go find a home for themselves, and he can't even put them together because they are unruly, they are disruptive, they're breaking every law that he could come about. And the simple reason for that was he took them out of Egypt, but the Egypt was still in their minds. They still had Egypt. They still had the tendencies that Egypt put in them. And the only solution at the time, because there was no mind power, I mean, this is something that happened in the 20th century, was that the only solution you could come about was that let the people who still had the Egyptian ways of thinking die in the wilderness, so that a new generation of people can come that can be trained in an Israelite way of thinking and then take over the promised land. I mean, their trip was not far from the promised land. It's just that the people, you could not put an army. If you look at the story had to have an army that had to actually go and battle for Canaan. So there was a war involved, and you need discipline, you need order, you need people that can believe in what you say. And those people were not in the right mindset to actually carry out that vision. And as a result, it took 40 years. Now, I draw parallels to this by saying that here we are in a democracy. We have had presidents, from Nelson Mandela leading us out of Egypt. But now we have problems because now no one really knows what to do with this freedom, and a few people are catching